So you're new to the real estate industry, not new to business, just the business of real estate. And you're really looking, where's the elusive list of every step in the real estate transaction so you could do a better job? Well, this is Ron Wojciechowski for Real Estate in a Nutshell, and I'm going to give you a framework of what that looks like. So the first thing is, well, we can say the shopping process, but I think you need to back it up a few steps. And there's a lead generation process that fits in there first when you actually are meeting the client for the first time and discussing your needs and expectations and finding what are the top 4 or 5 non-negotiable things. I think you really need to start there. And if it's 3 bedrooms and 2 baths and a pool and a workout space or a library or a desk or a fence, backs up to water, doesn't back up to water, has 2 acres, maybe they want concrete block instead of frame construction, all those things. Boil it down to the top 4 or 5 non-negotiable things, and then make sure that every property you send fits that. Because then when you get into the shopping process, you're only looking at the right properties. And there are so many resources out there right now to do that. It'd be a little bit crazy to get a show list of 14 houses without going through it and say, hey, by the way, this one backs up to a nuclear power plant. Did you still want to see that one? See, because maybe not. Or hey, this one, you don't see it in the pictures, but it's got 2 broken down houses next to it they look like the Munsters and the Addams family. So did you still want to look at that one? Because the condition of the neighborhood might affect it. There could be a train in the back. Or maybe it's just a perfect property. But with so many tools and maps on the internet, there's a way to do this. We use Zoom meetings. Let's go through the properties together. I know this. Chances are you don't need to show all 14 properties that they have on the list. And it's not that you're not wanting to show them. We can help them self-discover that, look, you can look at it, but you are never going to buy this property. And here's why. Because it has this crazy feature that you just would never want. Or more importantly, look, I'm looking at your list. You said these 4 or 5 things are non-negotiable. It only has 2 of the 5. Are you ever going to be happy with that house? So I believe the showing of the property and the mindset behind it, it starts with a great conversation, the interview process, so to speak, of what their wants and needs are, and do some needs-based consultation. I think that's absolutely the first step. Now, I've got a few other things that we jotted down over here. We could jump into offers. I think as you go through the selection process and you find out that we got to narrow down to 1 or 2 houses, and I get it right now that there's an urgency to offers, but that may not last for another 3-4 years. Maybe it'll end sooner when the inventory does come up, right? It will come up. It'll come up. But right now, the offer process it's a culmination of doing all the right steps on the first couple of things and making sure looking at the right properties and feeling good about that. And they've got their money, you've got the financing, that's already cleared out of the way. Writing the offer is critical. Clean a contract as possible is good. Having a lot of terms and extras and asterisks in there probably isn't the best way to get a seller on board, especially if it's multiple offers. But let's suppose that you've soldiered through writing the offer and you've got that presented. Getting it under contract, that's really a big deal right now because it's so competitive out there. So as you write up the offer, whether it's an as-is contract, if it's FHA financing, VA financing, I would make sure the seller's disclosures are in there, the HOA disclosures. If there's a condo rider, if there's a lead-based paint form, if there is a home to be sold, make sure that there's, you've got the rider in for that. The 11th page of the contract shows all the little different addendums, or a lot of them anyways. Having a complete offer on the first go-around is your best path to getting an offer accepted. So we want to make sure that the offers are complete and something that the seller, might just sign. I think that's a winning step right there. So now that you've gotten the needs analysis done, you've looked at properties, you've written the offer, you've got it accepted, you've got some inspections. Now, the inspections that you're likely to want to do are at least a home inspection, I would say. Very likely a termite report, the wood destroying organism report, the WDO. A lot of times those can be done hand in hand at the same inspection. There is a wind mitigation report, which is going to look at the roof system, which might provide some insurance discounts, which is typically a good investment for a buyer to have that piece. And depending on the age of the house and the roof system, you may also need a 4-point inspection. It used to be 30, 40 years, but now I'm seeing this 20-year-old homes getting a 4-point inspection. I wouldn't overlook that right now. And if you let the inspector know up front, a lot of times there might be some discount in the pricing to get the various reports. The 4-point is something the insurance company is likely to ask for. You won't need to think about surveys and elevation certificates till down the road, but during the inspection period, it's a pretty big piece. Now, there may be something that has to be negotiated or fixed during that process, so make it known. And a best practice really is to get the permission of the buyer to send the report to the seller's agent, and have a really specific list of what you're looking for. Makes it nice and clean. They can see the evidence in the report, and then they can make a decision. If you're sending it over as like, hey, just fix all these things, well, it might seem like fiction to the seller. So I believe evidence-based is the way to go as far as any conversation about repairs during the inspection period. So now you're getting through a number of the steps and you're feeling pretty good. There's an appraisal that will need to happen. It's typically more and more we're seeing them not ordered immediately. A lot of times we're seeing it happen after the inspection. And let's face it, if it's not going to pass an inspection and you're not going to buy the property, you want to spend the extra $400 or $500? Probably not. So we need to think about the timelines of the offer that became a contract that you wrote. And if it allows for 10 days for inspections, fantastic. If it's 15, just keep in mind, if you're going 15 days to the very last day of the inspections and dragging that out, and then you order the appraisal and it's on a 10-day turnaround, you're 25 days into it. And if you wrote a 30-day loan approval within the contract, you're really pushing for time on that. So you really need to pay attention to the timelines in there. And just because you have 15 days, if you resolve it, move it on. You don't need to drag that piece out. Get those appraisals done. Give yourself some time to course correct anything that needs a solution. Now, once you've got those things in place and the appraisal is back, and if it's cleared by the underwriter and it's at value, you're probably pretty good to go. But there's still a few things that I've got on my list that I want to make sure that we're talking about. The survey is absolutely something that comes towards the end, but again, examining timelines, how long will it take to get that survey done? And is it a basic survey, or is it perhaps lot and block, which might take a little bit more time and a lot more money to get that piece done? So if it's more than your typical quarter acre, let's say it's an acre or two, you, depending on where it is, you may want to find out earlier in the process. Now, if the seller has a usable copy and is willing to provide that for you, that's absolutely something that will help you out. The elevation certificate, that's going to look at how it compares to the floodplains. And you may find out that part of the land is in the floodplain while maybe the house is not. So there's going to be some conversation with the insurance company as well as perhaps with their financing as well. So those go hand in hand. We need to pay attention to that. And I've seen on the elevation where, yes, the land is definitely in a different floodplain, but the house was built up enough where it didn't matter as much, or maybe not even at all. So these are things to watch out for. And if you know what to look for and you're paying attention, you can get in front of some of these things and avoid some complications down the road. Now, final walkthroughs are super important. What you're looking for in the final walkthrough, has anything changed? Copy the listing, bring it with you. Copy the contract, bring it with you. And the reason is this: not every property includes all the appliances. Are they all there? Take the extra step. Open the door where the air handler is. Make sure one's there. Go out, find a compressor. I've gone to closings where the compressor's been stolen. Make sure that's there. Get a look at the roof. Go in every room. Make sure there's no broken windows. Is the garage door opener functional? Are there, do you have other remotes? Check those things. So these are things that the buyer may not think to look at, that as an agent or a broker, I know I'm checking all of these things. I don't want it on my watch that, well, I just walked in there and was playing on my phone and y'all done, hurry up, got to get to closing. I don't want it on my conscience that I didn't do the right thing and actually walk every room. So a walkthrough, it's not just walk through and pirouette and turn around. It's walk through and take a look at everything. Now, it's not a reinspection. You're not there for 3 hours. But it should be in a similar condition to when you left it. And by the way, the old switcheroo has happened a couple times in my career. And what's that? I actually had the pictures of the listing and I pulled them up on my phone. The technology was there. But we went in there and the appliances, they looked a little bit off. Turns out it said it was included with certain appliances. And it definitely had appliances in there, but they weren't the ones in the picture. We went from, and they were white, and they were nice, and they were clean. And when we got there, they weren't so nice. They were rusty, and all the racks inside were dirty, and they weren't cleaned. And apparently when there was a move out, whether it was a seller or the helper, or in this case, it was a mover or a scrapper or some handyman. But what they did was they were hired to move everything out and clear everything, and they decided to swap out the appliances on behalf of the seller without telling the seller. I don't need to tell you how that worked out, but let's just say there was a yelling match going on, and lo and behold, there was mention of a lawyer, and the real appliances showed up again really fast. So that's a doozy, but that's part of the walkthrough process. Now, supposing you've survived all of this, you still got the closing. And that's an opportunity where you almost get to say nothing. And if everything goes well and the title agent is explaining everything to the buyer and to the seller, you're probably going to be okay. Now, once you've left the walkthrough, it's a good time to reconfirm that they've sent the wire and that the title company's gotten the wire, if there's a wire involved. And almost every sale these days has a wire involved, so make sure the wire's been sent. Know the address of the closing company. That's a good one, because some companies have more than one location, and there's all these other protocols these days about who can be in, who can't be in. Definitely got to have your IDs with you. So whoever's signing has to have an ID, and I could go on and on. But hopefully you made it to the closing and it's just smooth sailing and it's all rainbows and unicorns and balloons and fun stuff. And that would be great. But realize if you're at the closing, what could happen there? Well, the wire could be late. Maybe there's financing involved and the buyer sent their wire, and the bank sent their wire too, but they haven't released it yet. That's simply a case of there's a number of files in front of it where somebody in the funding department has to actually say, it's okay to release all the money. Here's the funding authorization. So that could definitely hold up the end of a closing. And there's a few other things, but those are the basic steps. And if you can keep those steps in mind, there's another 5 or 10 steps that you can insert them, occasionally as a one-off or something that might happen, throughout your sales career. You're going to find some other things, like there could be a well test, there could be a septic test. The permit process, if there's open permits in the process, do you have to open a permit from something that was never closed out properly? Because sometimes you've got to take one that's lingering, that wasn't closed out, reopen it and redo it again and get the contractor back if you can find them. I can give you a bunch of asterisk stuff right now, but I think you get the gist of it. If you can keep those basic steps of the sales process from beginning to end, you're mostly going to be okay. And if you've got questions, that's where you comment below and you get a hold of me and say, Ron, what about this one? And maybe we'll have you come over here and we'll do a video together on it. So if you have questions or comments, definitely put them below. Subscribe. Give us a like. This is Ron Wojciechowski for Real Estate in a Nutshell.